and speak to the person who specifically worked on this car. It's even worthwhile going through some of the receipts you might find in the glove compartment. They give you a really good indication of how the car's been treated throughout its life. But most important of all is the vehicle registration document, or V5. This can give you vital clues as to the car's history if you know how to read it. Check to see that the car hasn't had a colour change. This could mean it's had an accident. Check that it was first registered in this country. Imports are worth less second-hand. If the previous owners haven't had it for long, be nosy, ask them why. And finally, check that all the numbers tally, or you could be looking at what's known in the trade as a ringer. Well, nice car.
Well, it seems that, and in fact it is a nice car, but it's not the car that it purports to be.
Oh, what's wrong with it?
Well, it is in fact a stolen vehicle from here in London, and if you were to check on its identity, it is supposed to be a left-hand drive import from America. And as you can quite clearly see, it's not a left-hand drive car.
Now that sounds to me like a very, very sophisticated scam. How do they get away with that?
Well, in that particular case, they've changed all the identity features on the car to represent the ones on the American vehicle. However, they're not normally as sophisticated as that in many of the scams that they operate.
So give me some other examples.
Well, for instance, they may be as simple as changing the number plates with a vehicle that they see on the street of the same kind.
So how does someone like me looking for a second-hand car make sure they're not caught out by a ringer?
Well, there are a lot of things you can do, and one of them, of course, is you can check with HPI, Hire Purchase Information. If you give them your registration number over the telephone, they have a list of computer indexes which will have various references to the car number that you're checking with them. For instance, they can tell you whether or not there are any finance outstanding on the vehicle, or if it belongs to somebody else, for instance, it's a lease vehicle. Or they can tell you if it's been seriously damaged previously in its life, and of course, if the car you're looking at obviously hasn't been, there may be something dodgy in its history.
You may think you could spot a car like this, but document fraud is getting ever more sophisticated and ringing is rife. But fear not. If you want peace of mind, give HPI a call on 01722 422 422. Supply them with the vehicle registration number and 17-digit chassis VIN number, and they make a thorough check of the vehicle's history on their database. For £28.50, they'll tell you whether your potential purchase has ever been stolen, ringed, written off, or has outstanding finance. And if you find out within a year that the car you've bought is stolen or has outstanding finance, then HPI, depending on certain terms and conditions, will compensate you up to £9,000. So remember, look for signs of clocking and accident damage, and make sure you use a reputable garage to assess the mechanical condition of the car, and look through the car's documentation really carefully. Always get an HPI on the vehicle. It's £28.50, really well spent. The number to phone, 01722 422 422. When you've found a car, given it a full interior, bodywork and mechanical check, and looked over the history and documentation, then it's time for a test drive. What you're after from your half-an-hour drive is a general impression of how the car feels on the road. Always make sure that the engine is cold before a test drive. If you have to hang on the key, then there could be a duff battery or weak starter motor, or it could mean poor engine compression. Either way, get the vendor to pay for a tune-up and battery test before you buy. Watch the gauges and lights. The oil pressure light should come on when the ignition is on and the engine's off. But as soon as the engine fires, the light should go out. If it flickers when you're driving or refuses to go out, then you've got low oil pressure and major engine work ahead. The gear stick should slide easily into first time. If there's a significant amount of resistance, then you're looking at transmission problems. When you pull away, the biting point of the clutch should be halfway up the pedal's travel. If it bites any later, then the clutch is worn. A dull thud from under the car as you change gear could mean costly differential problems. Test the Synchromesh by making fast gear changes. A grinding noise and moving up or down could mean a weak linkage, and a new gearbox would be expensive. Make sure the temperature gauge works. If it doesn't move, then the thermostat is dead. If it heads for the red and the cooling fan cuts in, then you could be looking at leaky hoses or a damaged radiator. How does the steering feel? Well, if the car wanders on the road or there's significant judder from the steering wheel, then you could be looking at tracking realignment, wheel balancing and track rod end replacement, or more seriously, a new steering rack or a bent chassis. On a clear stretch of straight road, and when it's safe, give the brakes a good strong dab. If you feel the car lurch to one side, then you've probably got a seized caliper. Finally, use your ears. If you hear a metallic screech when you're braking, it could mean worn discs or brake pads. If you hear a blowing noise from underneath the car, then it may mean you need a new exhaust system. When you pull away, if you hear a screeching sound, well, it could mean you need a new fan belt, or worse still, an alternator, or the water pump is on the way out. Trust your first impressions. Watch for worn gearboxes. Clunks and thunks could prove expensive. Keep an eye on the lights and gauges. They'll give you vital information about the engine's condition. Pay special attention to the steering and brakes. And listen out for those odd noises which betray worn parts. The British are traditionally embarrassed when it comes to talking about money, but there's no profit in being a wallflower. So get one of those current price guides you can get from any newsagent, or look at the used price pages in the back of the Top Gear magazine. When you've decided you want to make a bid for a car, then do just that. Don't give the seller what they're asking. Make a sensible bid and be prepared to haggle. If they won't soften the price at all, then walk away. The vendor will come back with a counter offer, and then it's down to you to beat the price down. Make use of all that information you've gleaned from your inspection and road test. Price the parts and labour you think necessary to bring the car up to scratch. Let the vendor know you've done your homework and have looked at plenty of other cars besides his. Be flexible and honest, and you should come out with a deal which suits you and reflects the car's true value. Having done the deal, it's time to hand over the folding stuff. These days, there are two main routes to financing the car of your dreams: hire purchase or a loan. HP is available from finance houses and increasingly through car dealers themselves, and involves paying a deposit and then settling the balance in regular instalments. The upside is that if you're in employment, it'll be fairly easy to arrange HP. The downside that the finance company owns the car until you've paid off the loan. If you want to avoid buying on the never-never, then banks and building societies offer loan facilities. These days, it's quick and easy to arrange a loan, even if you don't have a home to secure it against. And the annual percentage rate, or APR, a form of interest rate which allows you to compare loans, often means that you can find one that will be cheaper than buying on HP. Take a professional approach to negotiating. The vendor will often expect to drop the price a little, so haggle hard. Know what price you want to pay and keep within that budget. Finance isn't the minefield it once was. If you're earning a wage, you should be able to get an unsecured loan. If you need to compare what different loans are offering, then look carefully at their APRs. Well, here we are at the end of the road, and I hope that we've made it an easier journey for you. Remember the basic rules. Buy a car that suits your needs, not your aspirations, for the money you can afford. Be careful who you buy it from. A reputable dealer is the seller who's the most to lose. Keep your eyes skinned when it comes to condition and documents. Make sure you drive the car yourself, and finally, don't be afraid to haggle. Bear all this in mind and you should have a clear path through the minefield.